Imagine, you're a general. It's December 1944. The war is almost over, or so everyone thought. Then, in the dead of winter, over 200,000 German soldiers punch a massive hole through Allied lines. Your best airborne division, 20,000 elite soldiers, is completely surrounded, cut off, running out of food, ammunition, and medical supplies. The temperature is plummeting to minus 20 degrees Celsius. Every military textbook says what happens next is a defeat. But one general looks at that map and sees something different. His name is George S. Patton, and what he does next will be called one of the most extraordinary feats of military logistics and tactical boldness in the entire history of warfare. To understand just how insane Patton's move was, you need to understand where everyone was standing on December 16, 1944. Hitler's last gamble. Operation Watch on the Rhine, what we now call the Battle of the Bulge, was a massive armored counteroffensive through the Ardennes forest in Belgium. The plan: split the Allied lines, capture the critical port of Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace before the Soviets reached Berlin. The Ardennes was chosen precisely because everyone thought it was impassable. It had worked in 1940. Hitler believed it would work again. And for the first 48 hours, it looked like it might. 3 German armies, spearheaded by elite SS panzer divisions, shattered the thinly held American front. Entire regiments were overrun. Thousands of GIs were captured. The fog and snow grounded Allied air cover completely. At the center of it all was a small Belgian crossroads town that would become the most important dot on the entire map. Bastogne. 7 major roads converged at Bastogne. Whoever controlled it controlled the entire German advance. If the Wehrmacht captured Bastogne, their panzer columns could flow freely. If they didn't, the whole offensive would be strangled. The American 101st Airborne Division, the legendary Screaming Eagles, was rushed in to hold it. They arrived just in time. And then the Germans closed the ring around them. By December 20th, Bastogne was completely encircled. The 101st was on its own. On December 19th, 3 days into the crisis, Supreme Commander Dwight Eisenhower called an emergency conference in Verdun, France. Every senior Allied commander in the theater was there. The mood was grim. Some officers were suggesting a tactical withdrawal. Others were stunned into silence. Then Eisenhower turned to Patton. He asked, "How soon can you attack northward to relieve Bastogne?" Most generals would have asked for 2 or 3 weeks. You need time to disengage your divisions from their current front, move them hundreds of kilometers in winter conditions, reorganize supply lines, prepare attack plans, brief your officers. Patton looked at Eisenhower and said, 48 hours. The room went quiet. Someone laughed. They thought it was a joke? It wasn't. What the other generals didn't know, what made this moment extraordinary, was that Patton had already planned it. Before the conference even started, before he had official orders, Patton had quietly ordered his staff to prepare 3 separate attack plans. Each plan corresponded to a different direction Eisenhower might ask him to strike. He had pre-positioned his units. He had already started moving logistics. When the phone rang that morning calling him to Verdun, Patton told his chief of staff, "We're going to Bastogne. Get it ready." He walked into that conference already prepared to execute. His promise of 48 hours wasn't bravado. It was a military calculation, one that he had already done the homework for. Here's where military historians stop and stare. Patton's Third Army was engaged in heavy combat to the east, fighting toward the Saar region in Germany. To relieve Bastogne, he needed to disengage his forces, rotate his entire army 90 degrees northward, and launch a coherent armored offensive through some of the worst winter conditions in decades. Think about what that means operationally. 3 full divisions, roughly 60,000 men and thousands of vehicles, had to physically stop what they were doing, turn left, and advance in an entirely new direction. Supply convoys had to be rerouted. New fuel and ammunition depots had to be established. Communication lines had to be redrawn. In normal conditions, this takes weeks. Military planners typically budget 10 to 14 days minimum for a maneuver of this scale. Patton did it in 48 hours. How? 3 reasons. First, preparation. Patton had long believed that a commander who waits for orders before thinking is already too late. He had trained his staff to develop contingency plans constantly. The pivot wasn't improvised. It was executed from a pre-existing blueprint. Second, command culture. Patton's officers were empowered to act without waiting for clarification. The orders were broad and fast: get there, attack, relieve. The details were delegated down the chain. This eliminated the bureaucratic paralysis that crippled other commands. Third, logistics mastery. Patton is often remembered as a warrior, but behind every great advance was an extraordinary logistical operation. His supply chief, General Walter Muller, had pre-staged fuel and ammunition for exactly this kind of rapid reorientation. The trucks were already moving before the official orders came down. By December 22nd, Patton's lead units were pushing north through snowstorms, attacking into the flank of the German encirclement. But war is not just maps and maneuver arrows. Let's talk about what this looked like on the ground. The soldiers of Patton's 4th Armored Division were not well-rested troops preparing for a fresh offensive. They had been fighting continuously for months. They were exhausted, their vehicles were worn, and the weather was brutal. Temperatures dropping well below freezing, roads buried in snow and ice, visibility near zero. And yet, they moved. They moved because of Patton's particular talent, and it was a talent as real as his tactical genius, for making soldiers believe the impossible was achievable. He visited his men constantly. He was visible. He was direct. His speeches were not carefully worded political statements. They were raw, sometimes profane, and completely honest. He told his men exactly what was at stake. 20,000 Americans were surrounded. They were waiting, and the Third Army was going to go get them. Inside Bastogne, the 101st was holding on by a thread. Ammunition was critically low. The wounded filled every available building, and in a moment that has become legendary, when the German commander sent a message demanding surrender, General Anthony McAuliffe sent back a one-word reply: nuts. That spirit, that refusal to accept defeat, mirrored exactly the spirit of the force racing to reach them. On December 26th, at 16:50 in the afternoon, the lead tank of the 4th Armored Division broke through the German lines. Bastogne was relieved. The siege had lasted 6 days. Patton's pivot had taken 48 hours to execute. The drive north, another 4 days of brutal combat through snow and enemy resistance. Against every conventional military calculation, it had worked. So why does this matter beyond the drama of the moment? Bastogne's relief was the turning point of the entire Battle of the Bulge. With the 101st holding and Patton's army driving north, the German offensive lost its momentum. Hitler had gambled everything on a swift breakthrough before the Allies could react. Patton's speed denied him that window. Within weeks, the Bulge was contained, then crushed. By late January 1945, Allied forces were back to the positions they had held before the German offensive, and then some. Hitler had burned through his last strategic reserves. The men, the tanks, the fuel that had powered the Ardennes offensive could never be replaced. The road to Berlin was now open. Military analysts point to 3 lessons from Patton's relief of Bastogne that remain studied in war colleges to this day. 1. Speed is a weapon. The 48-hour pivot denied the Germans time to prepare a proper defensive perimeter against the relief force. 2. Preparation precedes opportunity. Patton's pre-planned contingencies meant he could say yes when others were still calculating whether yes was even possible. 3. Morale is force multiplier. The mere fact that Patton was moving, that help was coming, stiffened the resistance of the 101st and destabilized German confidence simultaneously. George S. Patton was a deeply flawed man. Impulsive, arrogant, controversial. History doesn't let him off easy for his failures of judgment. But in those 6 days in December 1944, he demonstrated something that transcends personality. The power of a commander who thinks before he's asked, moves before he's told, and inspires when others are paralyzed. The soldiers in Bastogne were waiting for someone to come. Patton had already left. If you want to go deeper on the Battle of the Bulge, the 101st Airborne, or the logistical genius behind Patton's campaigns, let me know in the comments below. War Origins goes where the strategy lives. See you next time.